Socrates, 469 to 399 BC, the founder of the Socratic sect, being fundamentally a skeptic, did not force his opinions upon others, but through the medium of questionings caused each man to give expression to his own philosophy. According to Plutarch, Socrates conceived every place as appropriate for teaching, in that the whole world was a school of virtue. I like that about Socrates. I'm not too big on his fixation upon virtue, though. He held that the soul existed before the body, and prior to immersion therein, was endowed with all knowledge, that when the soul entered into the material form, it became stupefied, but that by discourses upon sensible objects, it was caused to reawaken and to recover its original knowledge. On these premises was based his attempt to stimulate the soul power through irony and inductive reasoning. It has been said of Socrates that the sole subject of his philosophy was man. He himself declared philosophy to be the way of true happiness, and its purpose twofold: 1, to contemplate God, and 2, to abstract the soul from corporeal sense. I mean, I'll say philosophy to be the way to true happiness, but I think happiness and truth is a pathless land. The principles of all things he conceived to be three in number: God, matter, and ideas. Of God, he said, what he is, I know not; what he is not, I know. Matter, he defined, that's called apophantic knowledge. The apophantic, the knowledge of God through not knowing God, or through knowing what he isn't. Matter he defined as the subject of generation and corruption, idea as an incorruptible substance, the intellect of God, wisdom he considered the sum of the virtues. Among the prominent members of the Socratic sect were Xenophon, Aeschines, Crito, Simon, Glauco, Simmias, and Cebes. Professor Zeller, the great authority on ancient philosophies, has recently declared the writings of Xenophon relating to Socrates to be forgeries. When The Clouds of Aristophanes, a comedy written to ridicule the theories of Socrates, was first presented, the great skeptic himself attended the play. During the performance, which caricatured him seated in a basket high in the air studying the sun, Socrates rose calmly in his seat, the better to enable the Athenian spectators to compare his own unprepossessing features with the grotesque mask worn by the actor impersonating him. You're trying to say that's not me, don't do this play, kind of thing. Or he could have just let them look at him and mock him for a bit. That would have been more kind of Socratic. Get a bit of my drink. Ooh. The Elean sect was founded by Phaedo of Elis, a youth of noble family, who was brought from slavery at the instigation of Socrates, and who became his devoted disciple. Plato so highly admired Phaedo's mentality that he named one of the most famous of his discourses of Phaedo. I think that's one where Socrates discourses on what death is, and how what we are, what the self is, what our personality is like a kind of tude played on a lyre, like the strings vibrating, a kind of harmony. Phaedo was succeeded in his school by Plisthenes, who in turn was followed by Menedemus. Of the doctrines of the Elean sect little is known. Menedemus is presumed to have been inclined towards the teachings of Stilpo and the Megarian sect. When Menedemus's opinions were demanded, he answered that he was free, thus intimating that most men were enslaved to their opinions. That's deep. They are in a sense, the way I play the game of like philosophy and these kind of things is, I don't really believe anything. I mean, I'll express an opinion on here, and that's the kind of opinion that I have from
I will
myself.
believe anything that I find enjoyable.
Yeah,
I'll happily believe anything.
and just go along with it.
Yeah.
I find it hard to just go along with it. I'm more of a, this is what I think, and I think that's
I
wrong.
don't even have to go along with it. Maybe I'm just gullible. I'm easily duped, and I enjoy going along with it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think gullibility is one of the prime kind of characteristics of intelligence. The ability to entertain new beliefs. That's what gullibility is. Where is it? Am I?
And yeah, if I like read that dinosaurs never existed, it's not very hard for me to decide that is definitely the truth. I don't even need to see evidence. I could just see the sentence.
You're being honest about it.
Dinosaurs definitely didn't exist.
And then, what does that idea lead to? Ooh. And then most people
the idea sort of like where do all the bones come from? Then sort of like there's no like full skeletons of dinosaurs. So like there's only kind of parts of bones which they then deduced sort of from this thigh bone we can then deduce that the rest of it look like this. So like there's apparently no full dinosaur skeleton. And then I assume it's sort of like they kept finding really large like bones and like thigh bones or something, and maybe there's like the bones of giants. That's
what the Bible talks about the Nephilim.
Yeah, covering up the existence of the Nephilim.
In the Greeks, they used to believe that the dinosaur bones were the bones of the heroes like Hercules and all that lot.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, it could be.
Yeah. I mean, what you're doing now is you're taking the hypothesis and you're playing a scientific game of trying to get the data to fit the hypothesis, which is what science will try and say to you. First of all, we get the data, then we create the hypothesis out of the data. And it's like, no, you don't. What you do is you have the hypothesis, and then
to support the idea or to go against it.
Exactly.
You're wrong.
Yeah, when men, I'll read this part again because it was awesome. When Menedemus' opinions were demanded, he answered that he was free, thus intimating that most men were enslaved to their opinions. Menedemus was apparently of a somewhat belligerent temperament, and often returned from his lectures in a badly bruised condition. People beat him up. The most famous of his propositions is stated thus: that which is not the same is different from that with which it is not the same. This point being admitted, Menedemus continued, to benefit is not the same as good, therefore good does not benefit. After the time of Menedemus, the Elean sect became known as the Atrarian. Its exponents denounced all negative propositions and all complex and abstruse theories, declaring that only affirmative and simple doctrines could be true. See, that's that you're trying to say, like, before they're making a claim about truth, right? And a way of deciding between truth or not, but it's like, how is that claim true? You know, who polices the policeman? So they're saying here that the definition of true would be negative propositions, or untrue would be negative propositions and complex and abstruse theories, and then the opposite would be true. But here it's showing that
suggesting who says what is the negative.
Who says that that's what true means? But really, that's because true doesn't exist. It's a construct we've made up in our head, and then people try and define it, and then they fight over what it is. The best kind of definition of truth that I've come across, and it's not. I wouldn't really be said a definition. The best construction or construction of what truth is just a correspondence theory that a statement is true because of what it's about. You know, by relating it to that. The Megarian sect was founded by Euclid of Megara, not the celebrated mathematician, a great admirer of Socrates. The Athenians passed a law decreeing death to any citizen of Megara found in the city of Athens. Nothing daunted, Euclid donned women's clothing and went at night to study with Socrates. After the cruel death of their teacher, the disciples of Socrates, fearing a similar fate, fled to Megara, where they were entertained with great honour by Euclid. The Megarian school accepted the Socratic doctrine that virtue is wisdom. According to it, the Eleatic concept that goodness is absolute unity and all change an illusion of the senses. Euclid maintained that good has no opposite, and therefore evil does not exist. Being asked about the nature of gods, He declared himself ignorant of their disposition, save that they hated curious persons. That's brilliant. I mean, if you say that everything is good, and because good has no opposite, right, that leads to some conclusions. If you follow that premise of guts, rape actually happens, murder actually happens, and if good has no opposite and good is, then there is no evil. You include within the category of good rape and murder and theft, because it happens. I mean, but they've also got this intense kind of distrust of the senses, which is similar to what a lot of the Brahmanism in Hinduism had. Like a lot of their kind of meditation is in order to get to a kind of samadhi state, which is where you're not aware of anything, not even awareness itself. Basically, they're trying to get to a kind of non-existent state. Fucking wasp. The Megarians.
Doesn't sound very productive, does it?
What? No, it's not productive. But then again,
Becoming nothing.
But then again, who's to say that being productive is the way to be?
I don't know. I'm happy when I'm productive.
I'm hoping if I feel fearful around wasps.
Yeah, you can sense it.
Yeah, it could be.
Because it knows that I have no fear of him.
The Megarians are occasionally included among the dialectic philosophers. I think the dialectic philosophers are just people who would argue with people and discuss with people, because dialectic just means conversation.
Right.
Euclid, who died in about 374 BC, was succeeded in his school by Eubulides, among whose disciples was Alexinus and Apollonius Cronus. Euphantus, who lived to great age and wrote many tragedies, was among the foremost followers of Eubulides. Diodorus is usually included in the Megarian school, having heard Eubulides' lecture. According to legend, Diodorus died of grief because he could not answer instantly certain questions asked him by Stilpo, at one time master of the Megarian school. Bloody wasp.
He died of grief.
Yeah, because he could not answer instantly certain questions asked him by Stilpo.
Poor guy.
Yeah, at one time master of the Megarian school. I mean, that makes me look down on him a bit. You know, oh, I can't. I'm ignorant. I can't admit ignorant. Oh no, I'll kill myself or I'll die or whatever. Diodorus held that nothing can be moved, since to be moved it must be taken out of the place in which it is and put into the place where it is not, which is impossible, because all things must always be in the places where they are. That's quite funny, I know. A lot of these arguments they used to come up with were quite funny. It's like that argument can be destroyed by like bringing in temporality. So yeah, it's not there now, but then it's there. The Cynics were a sect founded by Antisthenes of Athens, a disciple of Socrates. Their doctrine may be described as an extreme individualism, which considers man as existing for himself alone, and advocates surrounding him by inharmony, suffering, and direst need, that he may thereby be driven to retire more completely into his own nature. That's deep, I think. I think that's all the suffering and inharmony, and that it pushes you upon yourself, or it can do. The Cynics renounced all worldly possessions, living in the rudest shelters and subsisting upon the coarsest and simplest food. On the assumption that the gods wanted nothing, the Cynics affirmed that those whose needs were fewest consequently approached closest to the divinities. Being asked what he gained by a life of philosophy, Antisthenes replied that he had learned how to converse with himself. I love the Cynics. There was a time a couple of years back, I was thinking to myself, why don't I just meditate in town with a begging bowl in front of me until I have enough money or food to travel to like the next city, and then just do walking meditation all the way through and just live like that? It would be cool, wouldn't it? Diogenes of Sinope is remembered chiefly for the tub in the Metrium, which for many years served him as a home. The people of Athens loved the beggar philosopher, and when a youth in jest bored holes in the tub, the city presented Diogenes with a new one and punished the youth. Diogenes believed that nothing in life can be rightly accomplished without exercitation. I'm not sure what that is. He maintained that everything in the world belonged... Let's look it up. Exercitation. Okay, Google. Okay, Google.